Hey everyone, today I want to talk all about existential OCD, but I'm going to put a lot of the focus and the merit on the feelings of disconnection, the feelings of depersonalization and derealization, why this affected me so much. I basically had depersonalization and derealization chronically latched in the background for the better part of 2 to 3 years. Sometimes it would be there full force most of the time throughout the day. Many other times, if I was doing something or I wasn't really focused on something, or being more focused would be beneficial, like a conversation, it lingered. But as soon as I would get into a social setting, like going out for a drink or going to for a holiday, it would really ramp up, and it would feel, as I always say, and we always say those to recovery, like I was underwater, in this glass of water, kind of seeing how it would be if you had chlorine in your eyes. Another way I describe it is, if I'm speaking to, say, you right now, whoever's watching this, and you're me in the camera, instead of me looking at, say, John, it would be me, this foggy glass, underwater, distancy sensation, and then John, where I would have these conversations and I would think, what are we even talking about? Because I was there, but in my mind, I was so disconnected and so far away. And I'm going to talk about all the other beliefs that relate to that. So before I go any further, please subscribe, comment down below. This applies to existential fear of being dead, fear of being the only person who's alive, fear of being in the vacuum, simulations, fear of afterlife, and all the unknown things that we'll never get certainty on. And you hear stuff about, people say, well, I read an article on simulation that triggered me. That article did not trigger you in the way you're imagining. Your belief system about being a robot and or being the only conscious being, watching stuff such as The Matrix, The Truman Show, the movie Inception. Those are the 3 big exposures I gave from a documentary standpoint, but then they run their course. And if you need help with this fear, please email us at phil@ocdrecovery.com, and we'll get back to you in time and fashion. So I'm going to bring out the book for this one. That way we can go through a couple practical examples. So let's take some time speaking about the feeling of disconnection and dpdr in of itself, the depersonalization, derealization, what I described in the beginning of the video. Now, that particular sensation, there are no direct exposures for it. Just like there's really no direct exposures for sensory motor OCD, it's just another sensation that you hate and you don't want to experience for the rest of your life. So when you're going throughout your day, and the months and the year and 2 years in, you'll have to bring that sensation with you everywhere as you decrease all avoidance behaviors that you would have. It's usually more avoidance behaviors when it comes to dpdr. And I see a lot of nonsense on social media. Not wanting to drink caffeine, not wanting to drink alcohol. Of course, we're not speaking about alcoholism, the average person who can balance it. Not wanting to work too much. Fear of sleep related, with if I'm too tired, if I'm too exhausted, all the sleep rituals that people fall into because they don't want to feel stronger, dpdr. So the activating event on this particular example will be, and this is what it should look like when you're writing this out on paper. So again, I obviously keep a lot of paper here when I'm doing my notes, but taking out a piece of paper or a notebook and when you're actually taking time to go through this. So I must not experience dpdr. I'm going to just call it that for the remainder of the video. It's awful, terrible, horrible to experience dpdr. It's worse than bad. It's the worst thing ever. Life is not worth living if I have dpdr for the remainder of my life. That equals consequence. Remember, activating event, the dpdr, those are the belief systems. A plus B equals C. Consequence, as I always say, has an emotional area and it has a behavioral area or components. So the negative emotions would be anger, maybe anger that you're having, secondary anger. Oh my God, this is so terrible, I can't stand it. Angry. Could be depression. Oh my gosh, dpdr is so terrible, that falls into depression, a lot of avoidance behaviors. Problematic envy and jealousy. Look at these people, they don't have dpdr, and you can do comparative suffering with people who are on the journey, who have OCD that might not even have dpdr, and because in your mind, you always think you're the worst. We all do that. So maybe you look at someone with POCD and you say, oh my gosh, they have it so easy, they just have shame and guilt, but you don't realize in their mind how horrendous that feels to them, etc. And the behaviors is the avoidance, complaining, victimhood, all understandable. I fall into victimhood. I always like to say I was the king victim. I complained a lot, especially in the beginning of my journey. Oh, I forgot. I didn't put ice cubes in that. That was a lot hotter than I thought it was. Yes, I'm an ice cube person. I don't really drink a lot of hot coffee. When I go somewhere, I get lots of cold brews or iced coffees. I'm that guy. And I don't trust people who put cream and sugar in their coffee. Just get away from me, okay? It's black coffee only. ADHD, love it. So, and those are all the adaptive behaviors that you're doing that are problematic. Again, it's a lot of avoidance, a lot of complaining, and a lot of little things like taking a lot of over-the-counter supplements to escape the dpdr sensations, venting and reassurance seeking to your partners. Oh my God, I had such a bad day with dpdr. Now, when you go into your disputing, which is the key part, and again, you're not going to have any perspective shifts when you're doing this. This is to set you up long-term when you're out in public and you're, maybe you're watching a documentary with your wife and you're watching something on the Holocaust or something on Mao, or you're watching on something really strong, tragedy or government that killed Genghis Khan. You think, wow, this is a really tough life. Having dpdr isn't the end of the world. That's how you start to slowly chip away at that. So the chances of you having perspective shifts in the moment while you're doing this is pretty rare. So where is holding this belief getting me that having dpdr is horrible and that you can't stand it? Well, it's not really getting you anywhere. It's getting you stuck watching these videos in the cycle of trying to push it away. Is it really as awful as it could be? No, it's not as awful as it could be, because it could be much worse. You could have a bunch of other things going on in your life, but instead you are here complaining about your dpdr, which is, again, is understandable, but you are going to have to get yourself to a place where you're decreasing the complaining. Can I really not stand it? Well, of course you can stand it, because you're here standing it right now. Now, that sounds like semantics. Many people I work with have told me that's semantics, and they say it doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's because when you get to the other side, you realize it's not really semantics. Because when you say, I can't stand it over and over and over again, subconsciously your brain starts to believe that, and you add extra gasoline to the fire, and you make it even more difficult to recover. So that's a really important thing to cover. Okay? Is life totally not worth living if I have dpdr? Well, that can't be the case, because people have much worse things, terminal cancer. Like my dad had stage 4 cancer that spread to his liver. He only lived 7 months. Does it follow my logical preferences? Of course it doesn't follow logical preferences, because logical preferences will now equal the new effective new philosophies. Okay? I would very much prefer to not have dpdr present all day, but because there's no universal principles that state I shouldn't have it, then I can learn to live with it. Very important. It may be bad or unfortunate, but it's not 100% awful. I can still enjoy many things while I'm experiencing dpdr. I don't like it, but I can stand it. I'm standing it right now. My overgeneralization, my catastrophic thinking, my black and white adding gasoline to the fire is only making secondary and tertiary problems to my belief system and making it very difficult to get better by changing my perspectives on my DP and DR. This is all very important. And again, in this book, first book on our reading list, I don't meet many people who recover from OCD who have not read this book a few times over a year or 2 years. And people who haven't gone through, and as I always see, you could see all the note-taking I make and the highlighting. I mean, it's just one of those things where it takes time to really show your brain, I'm going to take this seriously. And all of that, your effective new philosophy equals new things, which is the biggest misconception about any sensation. It's not just depersonalization and derealization. It's not about liking it. I see a lot of people out there on social media that say, like your thoughts, bring them in, like them, tell yourself you like them. But that goes against acceptance, doesn't mean agreement. What they're trying to do is to convince you that you like your thoughts, and that's not going to work. You don't have to like your thoughts. You don't have to like the urges. You don't have to like the sensations. You don't have to like the overall presence of OCD in your life. But what you do have to do is become comfortable with the presence of it as you go about changing your beliefs. That's a very, very important thing to remember, okay? And that equals healthy annoyance, healthy regret and sorrow, but also allows you to be a problem-solving individual, something that I may seem like I'm good at now, but I certainly wasn't good at in the past. I had really good grit. I pushed through discomfort, but I wasn't very critical in many ways. I didn't think about a lot of things. So that's how you break down the dpdr sensations itself. I want to spend the remainder of this video talking about the fear of being alone, the fear of being the only living creature, the fear of being nothing is real, having no meaningful purpose in life. So I believe, I said in previous recent videos, Arthur Schopenhauer, who is the godfather of pessimism. So I don't think that there's any universal purpose in life. I think thinking that there's universal purpose in life gets you into trouble because you get very angry at people when they act in ways that you don't deem fit. People are going to commit murders. People are going to do things, sexual behaviors against people. People are going to steal. They're going to lie. And if you don't accept the realities of life, that there's much more brutality in the world than what you believe is good, you can go to many places on earth right now where there's a lot of tragedies going on. Life is not rainbows. That doesn't mean you can't find peace and solitary in life whilst going through suffering. I don't agree with Buddha. I don't agree with the way that, again, I don't like to use name dropping, but I don't agree with the way Jordan Peterson says life is suffering. That's not true, because that would mean that every aspect of life is suffering. It's very simple to me how incorrect these philosophies are in my point of view, because to say that life is suffering means that everything is suffering. That's not true. Life has suffering, sometimes more suffering than others, but you can learn from those things. A lot of people are getting caught up in that right now. You know, using these big words like nihilism and all this stuff. It's not that. Humans are humans. They do what they do. Many times we don't really know why they do them, but we know that belief systems, behaviors, culture, all leading down into that. Daisy's whining, so I'm going to let her in real quick. She's in the brat mode. Come on, get in here. You can come in here. She's so pathetic. She just sits at my door and she just whines. I'll show her after this video. She's now going to sit underneath me. So let's say you were the only person on earth. Okay, let's say that everything was a simulation and that nothing was real and that you're already dead. Okay, this is a big fear for a lot of people. Solipsism and existential-based fears. And existentialism as a topic of discussion doesn't have to equal shame and guilt. Many people think when you're talking about existentialism and that it has to perpetuate this depressive feeling. This is a sad topic. I could talk about death. I could talk about murder. I could talk about all these big topics that many people don't want to talk about. Yes, it can instill feelings in me from a natural, biological, and innate response. But my belief systems about speaking about those topics are what's going to determine my actual primary outcome. Many people miss that. So just talking about existentialism doesn't really mean anything unless you put context to it. That is very important to cover. Okay, so let's say you're a robot or you're the only conscious being and everyone else was fake. Well, there's no universal principle stating that you can't have a relationship with a subconscious projection, like in the movie Inception, if Leonardo DiCaprio was to have a romance with his ex-wife who committed suicide, because remember, if you've seen the movie, they came back, he tricked her mind, she thought the real world was the dream world, so she committed suicide to go back to the dream world, but she actually just committed suicide. And then she could have, and in the dream space, she's trying to get him back. He could have easily stayed in limbo, empty dream space, and dated her forever. I'm not saying that is, yeah, sure, you'll have that thought, like, I know, I wish this was a real human. I wish that there was a real connection here. But what does real connection even mean? I mean, people are going to have relationships with AI bots in the next 20 to 30 years. We're already seeing it. Artificial intelligence relationships, men, women, anyone that you fantasy, celebrities that the program has learned on itself. It sounds crazy right now, but I think this is all coming. So it's a topic for discussion. Rob and myself like speaking about the advancements of artificial intelligence. That is going to happen. A lot of those people are not going to view that in a chronically anxious or depressive state. Sure, they might have a fact where, hey, look, I have a lot of social anxiety. I wish I would have worked on this, but instead I'm dating this robot. Yeah, that's not what I want, but I can make the best of it. Same thing with arranged marriages. You know, if you're in the simulation right now, and you're dating or married to someone and you're upset because that person may be a projection of your subconscious. Well, what's the real difference between that and an arranged marriage, which happens all over the world today in certain areas like India, the Middle East, in areas of China where it's much more prevalent. And as Moment said in the groups the other day, it's usually much more advantageous for the men and not so much the female because of the cultural beliefs in the society. Well, you might as well be in the simulation because you're not getting what you want anyway. But a lot of them are chronically depressed and anxious and don't want to be here anymore. They've accepted it with sadness, healthy dosages of sadness. But because of the modern westernized world and the way that we see things with everything about feelings and all about what I want, it's all about me. The world doesn't work that way. And the more you think the world should work that way, the more you think the world should give you what you want, the further away from acceptance you move. So you can accept the fact that you could be dead, because you're never going to get certainty on that. You can break that down with this sheet and the exercises. You can accept the fact that maybe you're going to feel disconnected forever, the first half of the video. You can also accept the fact that potentially everything in your life is a projection, your children, everything. Again, sadness. Remember, healthy emotions, healthy anger, healthy annoyance, healthy envy, healthy sorrow, okay? But you could still find moments of peace and moments of even intimacy or erotic moments with someone if it was a projection, because you've been doing that already. The only difference is the belief that you would hold on this, the belief that you would hold on this about it being 100% terrible, that is what's perpetuating the realness factor. It's not just going to go away overnight by slightly changing your perspectives. It will take time. Thank you so much for watching these videos. I'm going to try to make my videos a little bit longer unless I'm rushed, because I have a lot of good topics coming up. I have the one tomorrow called Doing Nothing, where I'm going to talk about why taking the foot off the gas was so important for me and all different stages of my journey and why it was applicable. Thank you again. Remember, Phil at OCDrecovery.com. Don't forget to read the books, OCDrecovery.com. Sorry, you message Phil at OCDrecovery.com. If you're looking for the books, that's just at our website, OCDrecovery.com, underneath the free resource tab. They're very critical. Yes, I don't have OCD on the cover. Many of the OCD books today are very outdated. Goes with thoughts or thoughts. Good principles for distancing yourselves. But chronic OCD sufferers, chronic anxiety sufferers are going to have to go a little bit deeper with the philosophies in this book. Thank you again, as always. Have a great day.